but he does believe it increasingly inevitable that whites will travel a violent path.
And if you'll study the history of riots in this country, when white people really had it all the way up to there and broke loose, they got mean. They're long suffering, but they can become so mean.
It was in the year 859 AD that Bjorn Ironside and his brother Hastin led a Viking raid into the Mediterranean from Scandinavia. They started out in France, raided down the Iberian Peninsula's coast, sailed through the Straits of Gibraltar. And I suppose in the year 860, maybe 861, they traveled to the Italian peninsula searching for Rome. Now, they had arrived at a large fortified city that had huge walls, heavily guarded, and they assumed that this was Rome itself, the prize that was awaiting them. And they'd already sustained losses and casualties over the past year or so of raiding. So Hastin hatched a plan. They had set up camp outside the city walls, and he had the idea to fake his own death. And he sent some of his crew members to speak to the leaders of the city, to tell them that they were there, they only wanted peace, and they were just seeking shelter, to sell them sell them the goods that they needed to travel back home, and also that one of their leaders, Hastin, was a dying man, and that he wished to convert to Christianity and to be buried, to have his corpse interred into the Christian cemetery inside the city's walls. The monks, the leaders, were extremely relieved by this. So they faked Hastin's death. They carried him inside through the gates with 50 of his men, all wearing robes. They carried him to where the funeral would be held. And once they arrived there, they reveal that they had been carrying weapons under their robes, and Hastin pops out from the casket, alive and ready to kill. And they fought their way back to the gate and opened the doors so the rest of their army could venture inwards, and they sacked this city. After they had gained control of the city, it is said that Hastin had said that we have gained control of Rome, and some brave citizen of this city, it grew very quiet, yet he pops up and says that this actually isn't Rome. This is the city of Luna. It is said that Bjorn Ironside was furious at this revelation. It turns out that, unfortunately, the Vikings, they had sailed, I suppose, a couple of 100 miles north of where Rome was. But nevertheless, they sacked the city, even though it was not the prize that they had first thought that they had attained. They used deception and cunning. Now, why am I telling you this story? Something that I've been thinking about a lot lately, over the last few months, is the need of our people to craft our own new morality. Because this current morality is absolutely killing us. But I'll get back to the story of Bjorn and Hastin a little bit later. You see, this current morality that our people suffers from has led us to this current predicament that we're in. And this current predicament is rejected as a sort of conspiracy theory among many of our own race. They aid and abet the predicament that we are in. Now, this video is going to be rambling, it's going to be disjointed, as every video that I seem to produce is. But I've got some different ideas here, and you'll have to pardon the non-linear direction that I will go. This idea of forging our own morality, this is something that me and my friends Patrick and Desiree have spoken about before. And our own morality, to put it at its most simple, at its simplest form, I believe should reincorporate a sense of nepotism. Nepotism being looking out for our own. Now, this morality, you could say it could be a sort of reversion back to our old morality. A morality that has been tarnished, perhaps over millennia. The debate among when this tarnishing began, there's many different opinions on. Some say it was with Christianity taking over Europe. I think there is some truth to this. But this isn't a religious discussion, and I'm not going to harp too heavily on that. But I do think Christianity has played a role in this. It has made the European man more accepting, more tolerant, and even, I mean, if you think about it, you're supposed to accept everyone who converts as a brother in Christ, regardless of their race, regardless nowadays of their sexual orientation, or whatever depraved proclivities that they may harbor. But that all being said, this isn't a religious discussion. You know, over time, I've mentioned this often before, I'm not very well read in the least regarding philosophy. Over time, over the years, and over my life experience, I've kind of came up with a philosophy of my own, or what I thought was perhaps my own, but perhaps it was influenced by others. And over time, let's see, I've read just a tiny bit of Schopenhauer, and I'm currently reading Will to Power by Nietzsche. In preparation for this video, over the last few days, you see, I've been extraordinarily busy lately. My life, it seems like, is changing rapidly in some ways. And I've not had a lot of time to read a lot of things. So in order to kind of prepare myself, I watched a few videos about the philosophy of Nietzsche. And a while back, and I mean, even in these videos, even in the videos that I've made the last few years, probably about a year or two ago, when I first revealed about my sordid past of being a drug addict and a criminal, being a thief, I mentioned in one of those videos that I didn't regret anything. And I had no idea, I honestly had no idea that a concept that Nietzsche came up with was called Amor Fati, or the love of one's fate. I had no idea about this. This is something that I had just thought up on my own. Now, perhaps there had been influences from some people who were perhaps influenced by Nietzsche, but I had no idea that Nietzsche had a concept called Amor Fati. And you know, looking back, I turned 36 earlier this month. And it's been a long ride in a way, it seems like. 18 years ago, I just entered adulthood. And at how many things I have done and that I have learned. You know, back during the years of meth, yes, I was a criminal. Robbery and thieving was my forte in order to fund my habit. And there was definitely a learning curve to this because, I mean, after all, I had been raised impeccably, I would say. My parents were outstanding parents. They had no vices. It's kind of a wonder to me how I ended up the way I did during those years. I mean, if you think about it though, our people, at least here in America, and especially here in Appalachia, we suffer from the opioid pandemic. I don't call it an epidemic. It's the true pandemic. Fentanyl, heroin, methamphetamine. I was never one that was much... I was never into heroin. I was into pain pills when I was in college. Things like Oxycontin, things of that nature, but after seeing the disastrous path I was on regarding that, I stepped away from it, got myself clean. Suffered through some withdrawals, but I managed to pull out of it. Unfortunately, though, just a year later I discovered methamphetamine. But anyways, you look at it, our people, the native European is a man of extremes. We always have been. That little video clip that I played for you at the beginning of this video of Tom Metzger talking about the ability of the white man to inflict terrible and great violence. It's real. But we can also display a kindness, a sort of kindness that you could say is angelic. We are a people of extremes. Now, and this morality, where I'm going with this is I think that this morality that we see today, it takes this yearning in our European biospirit, this urge to be extreme, and this current morality that we have, it does everything to dull this or to absolutely misguide it. One of the two. It does everything to dull it, to minimize it, or it just absolutely runs it off the rails. And I think that's what we see with the rampant drug addiction, especially the opioid pandemic, regarding our people. Now, going back to what I was saying about Amor Fati, back when I was a criminal, into robbery and thieving, I preferred to hit those that had no legal recourse, or people that were engaged in the same sort of lifestyle that I was. These people, criminals, unless they are just absolutely stupid and decide to call the law, and I have seen this unfortunately, because the police causes problems for you regardless. I mean, they know what you're doing. I mean, back when I was into meth, you could tell that I was into meth. I was hollowed out, extremely skinny. Plus, there's so many snitches that's in that sort of activity that they know who you are. Anyways, looking back on it, I did things, I can be a very mean-spirited person sometimes. I don't show it on this channel all that often. And I don't show it online either because I think it's just really pointless to get into these nonsensical spats and all this bickering online over a variety of things. I'm not against debating things, but just incessantly just back and forth. That's just so fucking senseless. In real life, if you want to go, I'm much more willing to go. Because there, it can be settled instead of just typing. Anyways, back then, when I was into thieving, I was not some sort of moral beacon. I liked to rob people that I thought had it coming, but I also robbed people that didn't deserve it. And that was awful. It was immoral. It was terrible. But I still did these things. And looking back on it all, and how things have turned out, I regret none of it. Regrets are a senseless waste. You know, in Amor Fati, most people look back at their life and they think, oh, I should have done this way, I should have done that differently. I'm not like that. I have zero regrets. But you know, Nietzsche has been often called amoral. And you know, it's interesting too, because some other things I learned about Nietzsche's philosophy that kind of mirrors my own personal philosophy, even though I wasn't aware of these things. And I think the development of our new morality, we can take things from our old morality, our pre-Christian morality. And you know, that's an argument I hear some of these Christians here in these dissident spheres say, is that the only reason that the white race became so prominent was because of Christianity, and our impeccable morale, our impeccable nature of morality derives solely from some desert religion. This is absolute bullshit. Many of these people, I suppose, have never even heard of Tacitus and how he was transfixed and amazed by the impeccable morality of what he called the barbarians, the Germanic tribes. What he admired the most was their fidelity to their loved ones, their fidelity to their husband or their wife. He said it was impeccable. It was beautiful. Now, in crafting our own morality, we're going to have to do away with a lot of things, and we're going to have to develop substitutes. We're going to have to get rid of this humanism and a lot of the values that was brought on by the Enlightenment and this Western liberal democracy. You know, equality is used. You see, Nietzsche, I believe there were 4 classes of people. There was the creative genius, the higher humans, the mediocre, and then the slaves. And there was master morality and slave morality. And I think there is certainly truth to all of these classifications and ideas. Although some people will debate, you know, that slave morality and master morality falls, I guess, into what they would call the black and white fallacy, I think is what they call it. Not sure. Forgive me if I'm wrong. You know, and I suppose there is some truth to that as well, but it's undeniable. Even though Nietzsche was proclaimed to be an amoralist, he was ahead of his time, in my opinion. Now, going back to Christianity, I acknowledge that it is a part of our people's history. I believe it's impossible to entangle ourselves from it. And I suppose it did lead to some advances. I will admit that. I'm not above admitting it. But a lot of the Christian morality we will have to do away with. This new morality will have to be looking out for our own. It will have to be nepotistic in nature, because whether we like to admit it or not, we are in a struggle for survival. I'm not going to call it a war yet, because the struggle has not developed. It hasn't came along that far yet. I do think it's coming, though. But whenever that is, that's a topic for debate, a topic of speculation. I'm going to walk up here to the porch, gather the rest of my thoughts, and I'll try to close this video out. I'm going to go ahead and end this video here. I guess I'll make this a little series. I guess there'll be 3 parts. And I'll call this series Teeth and Claws, Our Own Morality. Because this is such a broad topic that I don't want to bore you and make you sit through an hour-long video, or even longer. One day I may do a stream with some friends and we could explore this further. But I guess there will be 3 parts, and I've already got part of part 2 done, so I'll have it uploaded in a few days. Thank y'all for watching. Bye-bye.